This is Gateway City Sports.
It's a trap!
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
This is the Team of Rivals podcast.
Everything you want to hear from the big sports to the big screen.
He's all by himself, fires into the end zone. Caught! Touchdown! No!
Vaughn into the windup in his first offering. Just a bit outside. He tried the corner and missed.
He doesn't like you. I don't like you either.
Time winding down, Michael for three. Yes! She is gone!
I don't believe what I just saw.
Go crazy, folks! Go crazy! You believe in miracles? Yes!
You may fire when ready.
What?
Fans to the Team of Rivals podcast, proud members of the Gateway City Sports Network, where you can find great podcast and blog content. It's Thursday, March 2nd. We're heading into the weekend. We just want to encourage you, follow us on social media at Team of Rivals Pod. Find us online at teamofrivalspodcast.com. For those of you who prefer to watch the show, we also post to YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble. So hit the like and subscribe buttons and be sure that notifications are on so that you know anytime we post new content. Going to skip the monologue right now because, of course, we try to do a couple weeks in a row. We try to bring a sense of normalcy now that baseball's back. Spring training has begun. So, of course, tonight, joining me, co-founder of TOR, number 104 in the 2021 edition of the Top Cards on Twitter, Ron Knobel. And, of course, he's not here.
No.
Because that's his title. The permanent occasional guest host. He's not here. Although there's the possibility if we stay on long enough and if he's drunk enough, our good buddy Elliot Dewey may call it.
I don't think I included him on the invite on the email, but I can change that. I can change that. I mean, he's welcome to call in, but there is one stipulation. Whenever we've had him call in remote mid-show or sometime during a show and he doesn't join us when he's supposed to, he's supposed to call us hammered. And
because that's
did
when
you
it
save
actually
anything?
is a good show.
If I could go dig it up, we could probably save the Brewers Cubs game he was at. But that was, all the noise in the background, given, but I couldn't understand a word he was saying. Not that I recall, anyway.
That might have been, I don't know, that one ranks right up there with our good buddy the Zombie Hunters call in. As far as live call-ins we've taken on this show.
And it's too bad. I'm if I think back, those were the days of Be Live, I believe, right? We were using that.
I believe
that
that's
service.
right.
We were streaming, so there is video of that. We would have put a clip on had we known that subject was going to come up. But the audio clip doesn't do it a ton of justice. You had to see this guy looking over his shoulder as though somebody was coming after him.
Yeah.
It was CJ Basket. It's been a while since we've had a visit from him. We'll have to extend that olive branch out again at some point here pretty soon.
We will. Although, he's probably he's not reaching out because we're not live.
Well, he's turned and he is a zombie now and he's gone.
He could be. And he's slowly making his way to one of us.
It was right when COVID started, right when lockdown started happening, and we know he lives in the St. Louis area, and I believe he's UPS or something. I don't know. I forgot what his occupation was, but he was out, and it did have to be weird. I'll give him that. He's out. Nobody else is out. He's probably used to seeing people, even at late hours there in downtown St. Louis, wherever he was at, and to see nobody out. Yeah, he was nervous. I'm little surprised he called in that night, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised. He was often one that would, when we were regularly doing this live, we would see his name pop up in the chat. And speaking of live, Pete, I did contemplate that for a good long while I was in my man cave. out here just had some television on the background, some news, just kind of get caught up with what's happening in the world. And I thought, man, am I really going to do this to myself? Am I really going to hook up lights? Am I really going to pop up green screen? Am I going to do all this? Because you know how much I hate doing it. And then the anxiety once you start to make sure every button's right. So no, man, we're going audio. I like audio better when it's just you and me anyway. It kind of brings us back. I should have actually played just the classic intro. I don't have it on the board here, but I should have just played that one.
Maybe. God, I don't even remember what that sounds like.
The very end of our new intro is what the old one sounded like, mainly with some older clips. I'll have to bust that out on these nights that we know we're not going to be joined by the occasional guy. We'll have to bust out the original because it was quite good. We tweaked it. We tweaked it, but yeah,
not bad for a couple of guys in their living rooms.
No, not at all. And it literally was for a while. You know, before we even utter anything about baseball, Pete, I got to tell you that last weekend was one of the most exciting weekends, I think, to actually watch a live sporting event that I've had in quite some time. And it hasn't been baseball for several years. You know that it's been a little bit of a struggle for me. My wife and I were out here on the, big screen projector we have out. We were watching the MLS debut of St. Louis City. They got a franchise this year.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It was their opening game. And it was against Austin FC. I got to tell you, man, it was an exciting match to see an inaugural game. They were down 2-1 at one. They scored the first goal of the game, which was exciting enough, right? And late in the game, they were down 2-1. And hey, look, this is a strong debut. They're supposed to. I think reasonable expectations. They're going to lose most of their games this year. They're a new franchise, kind of a, collection of talents that were possibly overlooked. A couple free agents that, would have likely been playing somewhere else in MLS, but you never know what you're going to get with a new franchise, right? Like you could get lucky and you could strike gold like the Vegas Knights did when they entered the NHL, or you end up like, somewhere like the Marlins did in 1993. You just never know quite what you're going to get. And I'm not saying which way this is going to go, but they came back and won that game with under 5 minutes left by a score of 3-2. And it was exciting. My wife was out here with me. We were on our feet, pumping fists in the air, man. I cannot tell you when the last time I felt that way about watching anything live at all. It's been quite a while, and she's excited. She's like, when's the next game?
Well, wait a minute. Okay, so I have a question.
Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna need a ruling on this, because does that officially now qualify her as a soccer mom? Or does she have to have soccer players?
No, she's been a soccer mom before. The boys and our daughter, they've played soccer. They didn't this last year because they played fall baseball, but they've played soccer for several years. So she is technically a soccer mom, but we don't often watch any live sports like that where both of us are pretty pumped up for it. She's already asking when the next game is. Of course, it's on Saturday. It'll be the home debut, first game ever in the new soccer stadium that they built right down by the oh my gosh, why can't I come up with a name here? Union Station, and by where the Blues play. It's a soccer only venue built specifically for that. So it's not like, 50, 70,000 seats there. I believe it's under 30. But it's built for soccer. I think it's going to be, this whole season's damn near sold out. You can probably overpay on StubHub if you really want to go. And I would if I lived close enough. But it's exciting, man. I mean, St. Louis took the hits there with the Rams leaving and everything and all that controversy. And, they did get pro football back, which it's been entertaining to watch. The Battlehawks have had two fourth quarter, last minute comeback victories. And they, I think they're on the road again this weekend, but then they go to the Dome for the first time, and they will have the biggest crowd in the XFL. And they will have a pretty wild crowd at this MLS game. Damn, and I wish I was there to see that one. It's going to be fun enough to watch on TV. It's going to be a big deal, but it's good for the town. It's good for the city, despite all the other bullshit that's happening around there. Like people just walking up to somebody else in the street and just shooting them in the head, which is something that happened this last week. So,
unreal.
Yeah. So, take the good with the bad, even though the bad's pretty damn bad. But it's good for the region. It's good for that city after the hits they've taken. I'm happy to see MLS get there because St. Louis was the first, I guess, unofficial soccer capital in the U.S. It's big in the area, and that's, I grew up in a town in a high school that didn't have soccer as one of its sports, so I never knew any better. But it was way bigger in that region. So Happy for them, and I'm actually really looking forward to watching an 8:30 game on Saturday night. They're actually playing Charlotte. I guess you call it my new. I'm transplant, so it's my new hometown. But they're playing Charlotte FC on their debut, so it's going to be fun, man. I'm excited. Never been a huge soccer fan. I always did watch the World Cup and pulled for the U.S., but it's a St. Louis-based product, so you know how I'm going to feel. And maybe, since I don't think you're a Chicago MLS guy, maybe just maybe somehow I can convince you to watch a couple City games. Maybe we can get you rooting for something out of St. Louis besides like Budweiser.
Highly unlikely, but you can dream.
A boy can dream. You don't crush a boy's dreams.
Hey, well, listen, since we're starting with the weekend recaps, I'll bring up mine and I'll talk up my city a little bit. So I had the boy last weekend, and we headed into the city because just opened last Thursday at the Museum of Science and Industry. They've got a new exhibit about Pompeii. So they've got all kinds of stuff in there. And let me tell you, if you, the next time you're with Braden, or if you have the boys and you're in Illinois, I would definitely suggest heading down to MSI to check it out. It is, it's pretty cool. Liam was, he was bored a little bit there for a while, but then as it got towards the end and they started really putting everything in context, he loved it. So very cool. Some very cool computer generated graphics about how the whole eruption happened and what happened at Pompeii versus Herculaneum. And, but yeah, that was how we spent a good part of our day on Saturday. So not nearly as exciting as sitting in the garage, fist pumping with the wife over the St. Louis FC game. But yeah, kept it busy. Oh, and hey, taking a page out of L's, our good friend Holy L, I should say, out of her playbook, headed into the city on Tuesday night and got to see a sneak peek of Creed 3.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut. I think it was. And I know that he helped to write it. Definitely doesn't feel like a Rocky movie. The days of Rocky are over.
Yeah, he's is he passed away in this?
They never mentioned him.
Okay.
So there's
refresh my memory. He was sick in the first Creed. I can't remember if he was in the second one or not, though.
I think he had like a cameo or something,
maybe,
or they mentioned him, but
so they've officially passed the torch. I mean, it took a couple movies, but it's
over.
I quite enjoyed the first two. I thought those were very good. So
yeah, this one was interesting. There was a segment late in the movie. I'm not going to give anything away, but I'll just say that it goes completely surreal. A complete break from, not just a break from the Rocky movies in that Rocky's not in it, but a complete break from the style and the approach. So definitely doesn't feel like a Rocky movie.
You didn't hear some Mandalorian music in the background, right? Because didn't Ludwig score this one as well?
I don't know. If he did, it didn't feel like the Mandalorian. That's for certain.
Okay.
Yeah.
I won't get into that topic tonight because I know you haven't seen it.
Some excellent acting performances turned in, and
good.
It was a night well spent. It wasn't my favorite movie that I've seen so far this year, but it wasn't terrible.
I can't remember what her and I we watched something in the middle of this week, and it was very memorable, which is why I can't remember even what the title was.
There you go. That's good. So what are you drinking tonight? Because we did put a stipulation on that we would have to be hammered, or at least on the way to get there.
I didn't open my first beverage until after we were recording, and it's simply Mick Ultra, man, trying to watch that carb and sugar intake a little bit, so I'm going with the diet beer. And if I want any effect from these, I'm probably going to have to drink about 8 of them within the span of this 45 minutes to an hour of a show, which is probably not going to happen. I started too late tonight. But,
Well, maybe Elliot will make up for it when he calls in.
I certainly hope so. He does not have the link, so while we're sitting here, maybe I'll figure out how to get to you. I put it
in our chat.
Okay. You did mention Pompeii, and it reminded me of something I've seen recently, so hopefully you can hear this.
Tell me that doesn't feel like a cock.
It doesn't. That feels like your leg.
The other day I pleasured myself to the image of Mrs. Buttersworth. She got me there like I was on the Express A train. Bing, bang, boom. Talk about a river of ejaculate. A volume I had never seen in my lifetime. Now I know what the villagers of Pompeii felt like.
Of course, that is a blooper scene off of Anchorman. So, thank you.
I mean,
Pete, for sparking that
obviously Will Ferrell.
memory. Yes.
Unmistakably Will Ferrell.
Yes.
Well, I'll give my my little product placement, and then I suppose we can stop with the small talk and get into baseball. But just opened a new bottle, which we're definitely going to have to try because this is some good stuff. So I got a bottle of Knobel Tennessee whiskey. Probably not familiar with the name of it.
Nope.
It's Mike Rose label. So Mike Rowe, the Dirty Jobs guy.
Okay. I thought you said Rose. Okay. Mike Rowe.
Mike
Rose label. Okay.
Belonging to Mike Rowe.
Mm-hmm.
Some good stuff, man.
Didn't know he had that. I'm very
relatively new, and I think it's 10 or 15% of it goes to his foundation, the Micro Works. So,
I've been very picky with my bourbon and stuff, man. I don't.
You're gonna like this, I think.
Okay.
Because I'm typically not. I mean, I'm more of a Scotch guy than a Tennessee whiskey guy, but this is smooth.
Very limited palate when it comes to that stuff. I've taken a little bit to Jefferson's Reserve, and that is not. It's easy to find, not the most inexpensive kind. The Maker's Mark peanut butter. For some reason, man, my wife wanted to try that, and I got it, and it's pretty goddamn good. And then Blanton's, of course, not only hard to find around here. If you want to buy it, you're usually stuck to buying it online. It's about $120 a bottle. So,
well, I had drinks with somebody last night who insisted that there is a cherry flavored vodka that comes out of Wisconsin that will change your life.
Really, I don't believe it.
I know I'm a little skeptical.
A little like likely you've had the Cherry Noir from Grey Goose. I mean, it's fine, but it's not life changing.
Right.
Okay.
We'll see. Anyway, hey, you know what? This is a baseball podcast. We're 20 minutes in. Maybe we should talk about baseball.
Well, baseball's been so exciting and upfront about everything that we're just dying to dive into that topic or that subject matter week over week. It's been more and more difficult. Sadly, the most interesting thing is what we've been pinging text back and forth on, and that's just what's going to happen to games for half of this league, or probably more than half, right? Since so many of these regional sports networks are all owned by, at least a chunk of them is all owned by the same people. Some teams have a share in them too, I guess. The Cardinals have a pretty big share in theirs. So I don't know, man. What you hear, I think Elliot sent us a link today, and what I listened to, I sent you guys a bit of a podcast earlier this week too. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to it, but it feels like all but certain that their bankruptcy is going to be declared, and one of the options is they stop. They don't broadcast anymore, and so I don't know what the league or teams have in the works to fix this, but people like me, I've already paid for the full season of MLB.TV. So they're either going to be refunding a fair amount of money or they're going to have to figure it out really, really damn quick. Not to mention all the people that are going to be pissed, right? So,
and from what I understand, I saw an article somewhere online this week where they said that that MLB is looking to hire people. Basically, the indication that MLB is ramping up to take over broadcasts of this and continue service for subscribers. I don't know how they're going to hire up people in time to actually be able to produce quality broadcasts, and that would be my concern, right? I'm not particularly wedded to all of these regional sports networks, except for the fact that the broadcasts they turn out are good quality, right? You're not getting...
Well, they're good enough. We're not used to better. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Is MLB going to be able to ramp up quickly enough to do that? Or are they just going to look to limp along through this year? In which case, they got to make good on what you're paying for MLB.TV.
I hope that they'll try, and I hope this isn't caught up in all kinds of legal maneuvering that's going to take this forever to get going. I just don't know how they close a transaction that quickly to purchase or put it this way, I'll keep it local, right? If Bally Sports Midwest has to cease operation, yeah, sure. I mean, MLB or, Advanced Media Services, whatever MLB has that they can step in. Sure, there's a technical and camera crew and announcers and all that. They're already in place. So if you look at it, you go, we can make that work. But what about all the equipment? If somebody declares bankruptcy, what happens to all that? Does Major League Baseball just pay for all of it? Because, like when a company does this, Pete, and they shut down, assets have to be sold off, and then, whatever the creditors can recover, that the whole process takes place. So I just don't know how quickly or swiftly Major League Baseball can correct this, even on a small scale. And then do they keep the deals in place with the cable networks and streaming services, satellite packages, or do they shut it all down, reclaim rights, and say, we're just going to go direct to consumer, right? And so no matter how you try to solve it this year, it's going to be a short-term hit to almost everybody who's involved, right? They're not going to recover 100% of what they thought they were going to get from the regional sport networks every month or how often they receive a check from them. Like, that's not going to happen. I think based on what Rob Manfred has said, though, I think that my sense is that all they care about is getting the rights back, right? They're not particularly concerned with anything else because, and we see this all the time. It gives them more control. And ultimately that means that they're able to set the terms of pricing. Right. And so that's far more valuable than $1 billion combined from the various sports networks, because they probably can set themselves up to earn far more than that. They can
by making it available to everybody.
And they're never going to be able to do it perfectly for everybody either. Right. So even if they said, if they do something, for instance, like the MLS has done, where they've said, you buy it through Apple TV Plus, right? And there are no blackouts. You get access to every game. Are they going to do something like that? Maybe like, well, I guess Sunday Ticket's not even really like that, because football's pretty healthy in regards to having one game a week. And, that's still going to be on regular TV. Fox and CBS, they're all still going to carry that, ESPN. So probably not a good example. If they try to adopt something like MLS has done, where they just make it all direct to consumer, it's going to take some people a while to shift for that, especially ones that are, they're used to their cable package. They're used to paying, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars every year for a bunch of shit that they'll never watch, right? Because they want that live sports, so they're paying for everything else too. And that model is antiquated. And beyond sports, man, if cable ends up broken up, and you got to think that's imminent, right? It's not a matter of if, it's when. What's going to happen to some of these squirrely networks that the only reason they exist is to add to a channel count that they can send you in a pamphlet in the mail and say, hey, we give you over 250 channels. What's going to happen to most of those, right? So I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but the world's changed how people consume their sports and everything. It's changing. You can't even say it's slowly changing anymore. So they'll have to draw a line at some point and just commit to it, Pete. And a lot of people will be unhappy, and a lot of people say, I'm never going to watch baseball again. And then they'll pay $120 a year to watch baseball again, and they'll have their grandkid come over and hook up a Roku stick. Yep. And they'll do it.
And actually that's what I wonder about, right? Is I think my dad is probably on. Now, he used to be on the bleeding edge, and now my dad he's at least hip enough where if he was into baseball, right, and if they made it only available via streaming, he'd find a way and he would get it, right?
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about those baseball fans who are just behind my dad, right? Who, when it's not available on the TV, are going to be like, well, fuck baseball. I'll find something else to do with my Tuesday afternoon.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there are going to be,
if they can't, if it's not easily accessible for them, they're not going to go to the trouble.
But, I think there's some kind of math or model they can put together, Pete. How many of those people are going to hold out versus how many people are actually going to buy in, because blackouts may not be a thing anymore, which is why a probably larger than we think don't buy something like MLB TV. They don't subscribe to anything because they're in some weird ass region like Iowa where they're shut out of 6 teams. Even if your team was the Colorado Rockies, you lived in Iowa and you weren't blacked out, every time the Rockies play St. Louis, every time they play Chicago, every time they play probably Milwaukee, Cincinnati. I mean, Cincinnati claims, I think half the United States, but I think if blackouts are the biggest enemy of them right now, if they could get rid of blackouts, I think they'll accept that they're going to lose some viewers because they're off of cable now. So it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a few years for that to catch on and people to finally get over their hunger strike for baseball, and then they'll buy in again.
Yep. I wonder, and I'm sure that they've done the numbers, right? But I wonder just how much of a jump in revenues they're actually going to see because they're going to incentivize people like me who, and we talked about this when we first started the show, right? I had moved out and I had made the determination that there was no reason for me to get cable. I'm not home enough to justify paying for cable television when I don't watch TV. And getting, local Fox Sports at the time and then NBC Sports and whatever, right? It wasn't enough of an incentive for me to get cable so that I could get my local TV. And at the time, I could still watch enough. I could cobble together enough Cubs games between local ABC station and WGN. And then when they were on Fox or on ESPN or whatever, that I could see a good number of the games just over the air.
Yeah.
And then when they created
You're talking
Marquee,
HD antenna or something like that, right?
Correct.
Which if you live in a market like you live in, it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy. Even here in Charlotte, before I figured out that I could buy more than one Apple TV and run it wherever I wanted to in the house, I had one of the HD powered antennas. You're right. Like there were a lot, at least at the time, local HD feeds over the air that, one of the reasons I didn't cut cable right away is because a lot of those networks didn't have the local network station as part of, say, YouTube TV or not Hulu, but what was the other one there that everybody bought in? Sling, right?
Yeah.
Like you didn't have your local ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox. Like they weren't on that at the beginning, but they slowly started introducing those into those streaming packages. And I think that must have helped those services. But I, like you, I had an HD antenna out in the garage, man. It was very easy for me. If I wanted to watch football on Sunday, although the Panthers aren't the most exciting team to watch, but if I did want to watch it, I had that option. It was free.
Yeah.
So
what's going to happen, right? How many people like me are going to say, all right, you're offering me a direct streaming package where I can watch every single game.
Yeah.
And watch it wherever I am, right? I don't have to be at home in front of my television to watch it. I can pull it up on the app on my iPad at work. I can bring my iPad with me and have the game on in the background. I can have it going on my phone if I want to have the highlights going, and then I can be listening to it on the radio, and at a stop sign, I can take a look if something spectacular happens, right? Like, how many people are going to say, okay, you got me, I'm opting in. Yeah. But I imagine that they're probably also thinking about the Netflix problem of, all right, how many people out there are going to share their logins? Because if we're creating a national product, how many families with family member in Georgia, another one in Colorado, somebody in Illinois, somebody in Wisconsin, how many of those potential 4 customers are going to only be one customer because they're going to share logins?
I wonder how willing they'll be to let that slide for upfront, right? And there's
smart too.
There's an easy. They would be. I agree. Because once you're in there and you have a season with it, you're probably hooked, and you're like, fuck it. If they're going to clamp down on this a couple years into it, and clearly see that you're logging in from Seattle and somebody's watching the same game down in Miami, that hold on, yeah, I'm sure there's a way they could shut it down, but I think they would be smart to be like, okay, we'll let some of these rules lax. We'll get these people hooked on this service. Then we'll clamp it down later when we need, a little bump in revenue, or make sure everybody's paying, everybody who's enjoying it is paying it as they're supposed to be. So, yeah, that's how they do it. Netflix still hasn't quite clamped down on that, which I'm a little surprised.
I know they've threatened it. They did threaten it. I think it was late in the year last year where they said that they were going to start locking it down and charging people extra, but I haven't seen anything with it yet. So
maybe they have. I just haven't looked at my credit card statement for about a year, so I could be.
Well, I know. Let's just say that I know that they haven't. We'll leave it at that.
I know nobody's using mine, Pete, because I forget my password often, and whenever like the app updates on Apple TV, sometimes you have to log back in.
Right.
And I never remember what that damn thing is, so I constantly have to redo my password. So there's no way.
Nobody's calling you saying, hey,
no,
what?
Nobody's texting me or anything. And I know I've like stayed at a relative's house, or I've stayed at a VRBO, and I've used their streaming TV, and I've used my login before. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm in the clear. Not on purpose, but at least because I can't remember the goddamn password.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So 1 week of spring training behind us. Cubs fans are panicking because there is the not unexpected first round of injuries. The big one, obviously, that's got everybody in a tizzy is Seiya Suzuki's moderate strain of his left oblique. But then, Justin Steele got pushed back a week. I don't think Patrick Wisdom has played in a game yet. And so the Cubs fans who were saying that the Cubs already didn't do enough to be competitive this offseason, even though I believe that they've spent more on free agents and have also signed more free agents than anybody else this offseason. Still saying that the Cubs haven't done enough. And so they're all
up
in a
arms,
panic.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
How are things over there in Florida?
I think for the most part, it's pretty good. A couple of interesting things, though, but I'll start with the one I was worried about the most that seems to be giving me no reason to not worry about it still. That would be the pitching of the Cardinals. So Adam Wainwright had his first start of spring. Velocity, are people concerned? Last year it was his, I don't know if it was his stride, something in his motion, his mechanics were off, and his average velocity was down, and his start in spring training, although there's a claim that this has been identified and worked on, velocity was still down. He said it was some back stiffness trying to overcome it, but still, the guy's 41 years old, so that's a big concern. Jack Flaherty had a start pushed back one day, some lower half discomfort, but here we go, right? That's what I'm feeling like. Here we go. Pitching is, they're gonna have to come up with something again here. Position players, I don't think there's a lot of concern now. We'll see what the WBC does with this rash of injuries we see throughout baseball. But interesting thing in the Cardinals outfield is they've so this rookie, I think the number one rated prospect, Jordan Walker, who's like fucking giant of a man. He's like Kursant. What's that new Wookiee on Boba Fett? That real big one, right?
Kursantin.
Yeah, Kursant. Thank you. You can't spell that in a spelling bee, by the way. It's impossible. But he's looked good so far in spring training. They've had him working out in left field. They've had Tyler O'Neill in center field. They've had Lars Nootbaar a lot in right field. That leaves one name that's kind of people are wondering about, and that's Dylan Carlson. A couple of years ago, their best prospect. What's going to happen there if Walker has a spring training where the Cardinals can't justify or deny starting him off in Memphis, and they have to bring him up, barring any other injuries. What's that mean for Carlson? Now it's very early in camp. I don't know if anybody should be concerned or not about him, but I know he dealt with a wrist injury last year, and certainly when your hands aren't 100% or the strength in your hands aren't 100%, it makes hitting rather difficult, right? So we may be able to give a pass on that. But even the year before, I probably unjustifiably refer to him as the extremely light hitting Dylan Carlson. And that's what the impression has been for me. So I don't quite know what's going on there. But but
he's versatile enough. He can play multiple positions, right?
He can. I mean, there's no
it's
no
not to
issues
say that he
with,
couldn't be your fourth outfielder.
Nothing to say that, but that's not what you would have expected.
Sure.
With the hype around him as he came up, you would have thought, well, he's been permanently embedded either in center field or right field by now, and that's not even a discussion anymore. But it is a discussion. St. Louis cannot quite figure out who that starting outfield is going to be over a healthy 2-year span. It's been quite a turn, I would say. But Walker's making it interesting in camp. And I tell you, as far as position players go, you'd rather have this problem than trying to figure out who you're going to play in the outfield. You'd rather have maybe a rookie come up that makes that decision tough. Those are good things to have. Pitching, right now, that's the bad thing to have. And we all knew it was coming. Been calling it for I feel like 3 years in a row now, that this seems very light, and we're going to be wheeling and dealing again come late July. Hell, probably all through July to try to solve the pitching once again. So that's how St. Louis feels at the moment.
It's interesting because the Cubs have right out of the gate. It's been almost the exact opposite in that there's already conversation about, okay, how good does Hayden Wesneski have to be in his starts to where he's forcing the conversation on the Cubs? Because what it sounded like is the Cubs are planning to start Wesneski in Iowa, knowing that he's going to be up at some point. But he looked so good right out of the gate in his first start the other day, and apparently he was a little banged up at the end of the year last year, and so now Cubs fans are starting to get excited about, all right, at what point can you no longer justify development and all of this to where a guy forces himself into the conversation? And I think the other one who it hasn't taken off yet, but I think that it will is going to be PCA, because I think Cubs fans are incredibly excited about Pete Crow Armstrong. They've seen what he can do on defense, and defense is something that tends not to take an off day, right? You don't tend to go into slumps on defense. And so Cubs fans are wondering, is he going to force the issue?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you love to have, again, I'm repeating myself, but you'd love to have problems like that. You'd rather have those. And what you like about players that can bring more than one thing to the table is a player that can help you win in other ways, just other than hitting, right?
That's right.
You got somebody that can just run like hell on the bases or save a run or two in the outfield. Because even when they're slumping at the plate, if you've got that at a premium position, now what position has he been playing most often?
Center field.
There you go, right? Defense up the middle. Like you can, there's forgiveness, whether people believe it or not. There's forgiveness on offense when your defense is, when you're playing into run prevention on defense. Let's just say that, right? Like look at my former catcher, right? Not an offensive juggernaut for most of his career, definitely not at the end. But the defensive presence back there is what makes those guys valuable. They can help you win in other ways. Bader was the same way when he was with St. Louis, right? He could help you win. He can contribute to the team in other ways, even if his hitting sucked. And he went through slumps, but he was always there on defense and could definitely help you there. Now he's a stupid-ass base runner, but he was fast.
Yep. And again, bringing it back around to the Cubs too, it's a conversation that we had over the last, 6 years, and they're having it again just with another player. Jason Hayward brought very little to the plate.
The extremely light hitting Jason Hayward.
Yes. And I think that Cubs fans, a lot of the conversation that I've heard is if Cody Bellinger can just be a league replacement player, no expectation that he will return to the MVP winner that he was.
Yeah.
But just if he can be league average at the plate, what he contributes defensively and what Jason Hayward brought to the game defensively and on the base paths, suddenly that becomes, that does become a valuable player. And I think that that's a lot of what the Cubs are banking on, which could bring us, I suppose, to possibly our final topic of the night. He is leaning in. I have to say, I absolutely respect the game, and you know this. It's part of the reason why I backed off on social media so much, because I enjoy it, but it also makes me feel dirty. Willson Contreras is a world-class troll. And if Cubs fans don't see that that's exactly what he is doing, they're completely missing the point. They just are.
Yeah.
He may absolutely love St. Louis, and he may be wondering why it is that he wasn't able to get there sooner. But the way that he's been conducting himself over the last couple of months, he's totally trolling Cubs fans, and I don't understand why they won't just let it go.
Yeah, he's that.
Exactly why you hated him when he was a Cub.
It's exactly right. I'm trying to find the right words here. Look, hearing it part of me, one half of me wants to laugh my ass off because I know there are some Cubs fans whose heads are orbiting Earth right now because they've blown off their bodies earlier in the week. That's funny as shit. The other half of me is cringing. Like, you really can't mean that, but shit, maybe he does. But Willson Contreras is one of those, he likes to make his own rocket fuel, right? He likes to make his own source of anger or frustration game in a game out. I accused him of that for years. I was right then and I'm right now, and I think that's exactly what he's doing. He's creating his own rocket fuel to go into the year. He probably does have somewhat of a chip on his shoulder. Chicago wasn't going to bring him back, so I'm sure there's a healthy amount of that involved too. But you got to think that at the end of his playing career, what he experienced in Chicago, that organization giving him his first shot, he loves that town. He loves the fans. He loves Wrigley Field. He loved his time there. Maybe it was a little bitter at the end because he knew that, hey, this, they're kind of showing me the door without like showing me the door. I don't know whether to laugh or like just shut the door and forget that and just pretend that I never heard that quote.
Which quote?
That this is a better organization, all of that stuff. Because I don't know how he could possibly know that just a month in.
Right.
When you start a new job, it seems so much better than your old job. Everything that happened at your old job was stupid. Those people didn't know what they were doing. They fucked everything up. They made bad decisions. And then a year later at your new job, you're like, God damn it. Then you start to recognize the positives at your old job. Like, well, at least we did this there, or at least we did that there. And this is no different, man. I know this is sports, and it doesn't reflect all the things that I do day in and day out, but it kind of does, man. The grass is really green right now. But if you look closely, it might be Easter grass if you're not careful. So, Willson, you do you, man. But I don't know. That's not something I would have said in front of a camera or microphone.
You're right, man. Willson definitely marches to the beat of his own drummer, and he charts his own course.
He sure does.
We'll see how that benefits him, and we'll see how it benefits the Cardinals this season. It'll be interesting to keep an eye on this topic, and obviously, I can't imagine that we're going to have a weekly Willson Contreras moment.
We might. I tell you what, if they go into their what is now an annual June swoon. It'll be interesting to say how great of an organization is it now.
Let me ask you something, Ron. How much rope do you think Cardinals fans give him? How long will it take before a hypothetical underperformance in Cardinals pitching compared to their historical performance over the last 20 years?
Yeah.
How much rope does he have with Cardinals fans before they start to lose lose the shine?
It could happen real quick, but Pete, here's the thing. We've already went into this year, even if Wilson's not there, Cardinal fans are already on edge about this pitching staff and the lack of fortification, the lack of depth, right? Cardinal fans are already there with this. So hang on a second. We might have somebody call my phone.
Is it the interrupter or is it Elliot?
It's the show interrupter. So
nice. It's been a while. Good to have him back.
It has. I'll get him back on here when he calls back. But what I was saying was, with or without Contreras going into this year, being on the Cardinals staff, part of our problem is that you already have Cardinals fans the last couple of years knowing that the pitching is too thin on the staff. Like one injury is it's a house of cards, man. No pun intended, but it's a house of cards. I think this year, Pete, if the pitching, the bottom falls out or the wheels fall off like it has 2 years in a row, it's 2 years in a row that the pitching staff has fallen apart. I don't think Cardinals fans are going to look at Willson Contreras as being a part or a cause of that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Does it buy him maybe a little extra?
It's going to. It's going to. Now, if he's not hitting, and I still think a year. Dexter Fowler even got a year here. So I think the Cardinals fans are pretty. I'm not going to say mild because we throw the social media Cardinals fans out of the equation for a second.
Okay.
I think the fan base is pretty. I think they give a fair amount of rope to most players. So I think it's going to take a lot, and it's going to have to be for an extended period of time before the fan base ever starts to boo or do anything like that. So I don't anticipate that happening. He's too much of a competitor anyway. What could fall apart is his frustration that they don't do anything. That, hey, this great organization today becomes a frustration for him later where he's venting out loud. And Cardinals, if there's one thing that front office of the organization doesn't do too well with, and that's players being overly outspoken, or if they're taking shots at the front office or their own teammates in the media in front of a microphone and camera, which you got to throw Willson into that bucket of players that, I hope they don't put a microphone in front of him tonight. He could fall into that category. So that's not something that they tolerate very much as an organization. So yeah, if things aren't going well, I could see a couple ways it'll fall apart, but I think he'll get a fair amount of time. I don't think if pitching falls apart, he's going to get the blame right away. It's going to be the front office and their unwillingness to fortify and give it depth. That'll be where Cardinals fans put their blame. It won't be on Willson Contreras, not this year.
All right, so I would actually love for our listeners to weigh in on this. I want to know what they say. So when we post the link to this on Facebook or YouTube, so you're looking at probably about the 49-minute mark. Do us a favor, weigh in. We want to know what you guys think. How long does Willson? How long of a rope does he get? How much patience does he get with Cardinals?
We've
fans?
got one on right now that can chime in if he's got an opinion.
Yeah, let's hear
on
what
that.
Braden has to say.
Well, so considering the comments that Willson Contreras made last weekend, where he talked about and said that he likes the Cardinal way and the organization better than the Cubs organization, which was honestly a pretty big shock to me because he was there for 6-7 years, probably longer. Signed as an international. Was he signed as an international free agent?
When he was 16 years old.
Yeah, so he's been in the organization. He's 16 years old and 30 now. So I was like, wow, it's not even opening day yet. That's kind of a strong statement to make. Not many players say that about their old team. Arenado, with the Rockies, the Rockies are a dumpster fire. It was clear he was absolutely done with the Rockies, and he never said anything like that, big now. And so everything that I've seen from Willson Contreras, I think Cardinal fans they'll be pleasantly happy with his offense. And, you got a bunch of dumb heads on Facebook anyways that probably won't even pay attention to his defense and how he works with the pitching staff. They'll probably just blame, the pitching coach or Dakota Hudson or whatever. So I think he's going to have a big leadway, and I think he'll be just fine. I don't see him really declining that much. And if he does with the pitching staff or his defense or whatever, it honestly might be sort of a good thing because maybe it'll add pressure to the front office, which is highly unlikely.
I don't know, Braden. That's a tall order, man. That's if you haven't heard it yet, there's an expression called pissing up a flagpole. You can try to do it, but most people aren't successful. So trying to get the Cardinals front office to react from a player standpoint, boy, I don't know if anybody's been able to do that since Tony La Russa. And he wasn't even a player, so.
Which, it could possibly push them to get starting pitching. I highly doubt it, but the thing is with the Arenado situation, they were saying the payroll's going up. Arenado, I guess had a meeting with them. Blah blah. Arenado's a competitor and a winner, and so I was hoping maybe Arenado would push them to. Spend money, especially with the way baseball is changing. But
I think the difficulty that the regional sports networks are going through right now is presenting a potential revenue problem.
Oh yeah,
for the Cardinals this year. So basically, what's happened is the regional sport networks, with the imminent arrival of a bankruptcy, probably within the next week, has given the Cardinals front office a perfect exit ramp for having any more free agency activity. So that may be true, and that may be the cause, and it might be a good concern, and they might actually be being fiscally responsible for not doing anything crazy. But it also gave them a very easy way out for doing that. So if Arenado was displeased with anything else they did post a Contreras signing, I'm sure that's probably a reason that they have that's loaded in the salvo right now. And it'd be tough to argue.
Which I understand. It's just the problem that baseball has, and almost makes me wonder if, Major League Baseball should either get these cheap, which I'm not saying build to win is in this category, but get a lot of these small market owners who are cheap as dirt to sell the damn team or add a salary cap, because the Padres and the Mets.
He mentioned that, Pete. That's been another thing that came up this week that Tony Clark, I think, was very clear on, right? They're not going to agree to a salary cap. They're not going to agree to anything that will suppress salaries for players. That is just not something. I don't think we'll see that happen in our lifetime. This luxury tax works on what would you say? Like probably 70% of the teams. The luxury tax threat, right? Some are never going to get near it anyway. But
that's just
although I don't necessarily know how effective it is, though. I think that Tony Clark may mean what he says, but also I think that his statement this week is a negotiating position. I think eventually we will see some kind of salary cap, but it'll be paired with a really high salary floor.
Well, salary floor is definitely something I think we can all agree on universally that they have to. Well, not universally. We can as fans, and the players union will agree on that. Ownership probably never will. And the problem with baseball, Braden, I can tell you two teams right now as an example. The problems with baseball are teams like the Florida Marlins. Sorry, let me correct myself. I know I'm an old timer. The Miami Marlins, right? Is it Miami?
Miami.
And I couldn't remember. And the Pittsburgh Pirates.
And the Oakland A's. I'd argue the Oakland A's.
Although they're moving soon.
Yeah. They're moving soon.
But still, I mean, they're still just abysmal.
The Las Vegas A's are imminent, I think. But anyway, so yeah, Pete, long story short, long runway for Willson. In fact, the only way he's going to be cast out of St. Louis is if he turns into Tommy Pham, which I think is within the realm of possibility.
There's a possibility. He might be just as crazy as Tommy.
But, with the attitude that he brings, the competitiveness, that's very resemblant of Yadier Molina.
Yep.
Right? So that won't get him out. Turning into Tommy Pham will.
And we discussed this when he signed. It's what, a 5-year contract? Is that right?
Yeah.
He's not going to finish that contract out as a catcher. In fact, I would bet that he doesn't spend that by the end of the contract. Let's assume he plays all 5 years with the Cardinals. By the end of the contract, he'll have played more games as a DH than he will as a catcher.
You may very well be right, and if he ever listens to the show and hears you say that, he'll probably be a catcher at the end of his contract because he needs some kind of fuel from a Cubs fan just to somehow filter through his fibers and his DNA and keep those legs and everything healthy.
Hey, you know what? If that means that the Cardinals pitching suffers because of his declining catching abilities, then I will take that responsibility on.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, so I think we're at the end. That was a good topic. Glad you brought that one up at the end. But anyway, it's baseball, and I never thought I would say this. I can't wait for the soccer game on Saturday. What the fuck happened to this world, man? I'm sorry, I forgot my son was on here. But what has happened to me, Pete? We started this podcast. Did you ever think that, hey, spring training, baseball season's right around the corner? We were pining for it and everything, and here I am going, yeah, I can't wait to see the Battlehawks home opener this year. I cannot wait to see the MLS.
I'm actually really excited for the XFL game as well.
Yeah, I mean, update next week. I won't bore everybody that's not into soccer on this because I know you're not, but I'm a St. Louis guy, and that's what I love, and I'm happy for them. And update next week. MLS, baby.
So we'll have 2 running segments for the 2023 baseballs for season 7 of the Team of Rivals podcast. We'll have Ron's soccer update How long? It'll be Ron's soccer update. There'll also be a countdown on how many weeks before Ron starts referring to it as football. And then also we'll have the Willson Contreras corner.
The Willson Watch.
That's right.
What about Show Watch 17? Is that over?
Yeah, Show Watch 17 was over a long time ago. That's moved on to Philadelphia.
17.
It did. It really did.
Right along with Ian Happ hitting 18 leadoff home runs.
And if we do go live, I'll have to and I do an MLS update. I'll have to have the camera on me solo so the audience cannot see you and Elliot not at your mics as I'm talking about soccer.
Ron, I'm actually with you. I've caught a lot of Premier League games this year.
There you go.
If you enjoyed St. Louis FC, just turn on Premier League Saturdays and catch. I mean, look, yes,
I gotta have a team.
It's fun because they're here.
Yeah,
but the quality of play in England is insane. They're the best players in the world.
Yeah, well,
they really are.
If you watch the World Cup versus an MLS game, that stuff's pretty clear. If you watch a minor league hockey game versus an NHL, it's quite different. It's the level of play is quite different.
You know what's kind of funny about it, and it took a while for me to realize it. Like you hear there are all these leagues in Europe, and I can't believe we're talking about soccer. There are all these leagues in Europe, right? And you're like, oh yeah, well it's European soccer. They're all good. No, they're not. Like Ligue 1, which is the French league, it's PSG and then everybody else. And there's only one good team. And they just, how they lose any games is beyond me. And then in the Spanish league, La Liga, there are two good teams and then there's the rest.
Yeah.
In the Bundesliga in Germany, it's a step down in quality. In Serie A in Italy, it's a step down. And then there's the Premier League. And like the difference from the Premier League to the rest of the professional leagues in Europe is the difference between, it's the difference between Major League Baseball and the minor leagues.
Yeah.
There are some great players in the minor leagues, and someday they may end up in Major League Baseball. But if the Pittsburgh Pirates played most minor league teams, they'd win in a walkover because the talent level is just, it's just not the same.
They do all the things you take for granted. Professionals at their highest level, all the things you take for granted, the routine ground ball, the double play, that at the highest levels of every profession, they do that stuff and make it look super easy. So you take it for granted. You go watch a minor league game or a league down or whatever it is, semi-pro, like the difference is pretty clear. Now, let me ask you this though, in all those European league soccer games you've watched, are any of those stadiums empty or quiet?
No.
They're not.
Noise all game long.
And that's all that matters, right? Like, you're going to see it in the XFL when the debut game happens at the old Rams Dome in St. Louis. Like, they're not going to. They didn't open up the upper bowl, but they opened up the middle one. And if they opened up that upper bowl, you're damn well it would be sold out. So yes, the quality of the football is not the same, but the passion for the sport in that town is there, and it's pretty rich. And so that's very common though throughout Europe and their football. It's very regional. It's local. It means a lot to them. So look, I loved watching the Rivermen when they were in the IHL as a minor league affiliate to the Blues. It was a league of misfit toys, but it was so fun to watch. And so the quality was not like watching an NHL game, but it was still entertaining. It still meant something too. And when that league's around for a few years, you start developing rivalries and stories and history, and that's how you build on that. So, okay, enough of the non-baseball topics. We need to walk out of here. B, I'm glad you called in.
Yeah, B, thanks for joining us, man.
I am glad, like with this podcast, baseball being boring to talk about or sucky, it's like half the time I don't even know when you guys do it. So I'm glad I pulled a classic, 2017 me where I called in and didn't even know.
Yeah, there you go. We've only been doing it. We've only been doing it every Thursday. Now, my wife asked me tonight, what time are you recording? I'm like, Jesus Christ, Sarah. It's been the same time for 6.5 years. Now, I know we've been inconsistent, especially this off season, but it's always Thursday and it's always at 10. She's like, I knew that. Like, okay.
Then why did you ask?
To piss me off. All right, get us out of here.
You record in the garage.
That's why I do. Get us out of here.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to comment and subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your friends to do the same. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you listen to podcasts, as well as Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube. Be sure to check out the other Gateway City Sports Network podcasts, including the Derek King Sports Show. That's a winner. Talking Sports in the Bleachers with Don Glenn, 2 for 3 with Moose Michaels, and there might be some other ones someday soon.
Yeah. Some other stuff
Braden, where can everybody find you on social media?
Right now, really nowhere unless I decide to make a Cardinals Twitter and tweet anytime I have a thought about the Cardinals and piss off my dad.
Oh, well, okay.
All right. Well, that's where you can find him. It's a really long handle, but, just go ahead and search it. You can find Ron at
TOR_Ron75.
And we're sorry to have disappointed you, everybody, but that's why he's the occasional permanent guest host. Get in touch with us at the show at teamrivalspodcast.com or on any social media channel at Team Rivals Pod. We'll be back next week with your football update and your Willson Watch.
And your MLS update.
MLS update, is that what we're going to call it? We're going to come up with something clever.
Sure.
Ron might not like it, but it'll entertain me at the very least.
It should.
And Willson
by the
Watch
way,
2023.
And it's at TOR_Elliott, I believe. I've heard him say it at least 6 times over the last year when he's actually made it to the show. All right. Thanks, Pete. We'll see you all, guys. Maybe next week. Maybe if we feel like it. It's off season, so you never know with us. We'll likely be back on next week. But until then, we love you all so much. Bye-bye, everyone.